to our last panel for the afternoon, correct?
And then the keynote.
Yep, that's why I said panel, not keynote, Mary. And I will just briefly introduce the speakers, and then we will begin the conversation. We'll start with Michael Collins, who graduated in '07 and is Chief of Staff to Chief Diversity Officer at Google. Yeah. Did I say that correctly? Okay. Say it for me, please.
The Chief of Staff to the Chief Diversity Officer.
Okay, I probably cut and pasted it wrong, so welcome. And then next we have Eliza Gonring, who graduated last year in '21, and who is currently coordinator of Prison and Neighborhood Arts Program. And then we have Calvin Holmes, who graduated in 1987 and is CEO of Chicago Community Loan Fund. And finally, last but definitely not least, Tara Stringfellow, who graduated also in '07, who's a poet, author, and storyteller. And she's the author of this wonderful, recently published book, Memphis. So welcome, everyone. And maybe we can start with the question of how did you get to become an AFAM major or minor? What was the path that led you there? You can start that, as some other people have done in earlier parts in your life or within your studies. And why don't we start with Calvin?
Sure. Thanks, Alexander. And first, let me thank Professor Patillo for sending me an email in Ghana asking me to be on this panel. It has been a truly beautiful and powerful day, so I'm honored to be a part of this celebration, and 50 more years for AFAM at Northwestern. Woohoo! Thank you, Professor Patillo. So if I could be so fragile and vulnerable and be honest, Alex, if it's okay if I call you Alex, I stumbled into African American studies. It wasn't intentional. Originally, I set my sights on being a psychiatrist or a psychologist, and my father was in the peanut gallery telling me that I wasn't going to make any money and that there was going to be no efficient way for me to get out of his wallet if I majored in some wacky liberal arts thing. So I needed to get my butt up Sheridan Road to Tech and become an engineer so that I would not be dependent upon him 1 minute after graduation. So I was terrified of all of that and was a bit adrift because tech really wasn't my thing. And to be honest with you all, I think Tori, you said it, I'm from East St. Louis, Illinois, and I hadn't seen any rich black people, and I sure as heck hadn't seen any rich white people. So Evanston was a very intimidating environment for me. So I was overwhelmed from a class perspective, felt that I needed to be busy assimilating, which is what I was doing in my first and second year. I wasn't being culturally or racially conscious at all, I'll be honest. I'd gone to a predominantly white high school, so I was about the business of trying to figure out how to fit in. And then one of my really dear white friends who had gone to the University of Illinois at Chicago must have thought to herself, what is going on with this brother? He's from East St. Louis, he's showing up inauthentic, I don't understand him at all, and he probably doesn't understand himself. So she gave me, during the summer between my sophomore year and my junior year, 3 books. One was, I think, Toni Morrison, the other one was Ntozake Shange, and the other one was Alice Walker. Flipped my summer upside down. By the time I came back to the yard for my junior year, I was much more interested in African American studies and cultural studies and didn't feel quite the level of pressure to be busy assimilating. So I took an AFAM lit class, I think it was, and that's really when everything hit the fan. And I said to myself, well, I'm just gonna have to have a little dirty secret and not tell my father what I'm up to. but I'm going to major in African American studies because I love this stuff. I was so lit on fire. And I remember when I first got here, and Clarence Bourne was one of my counselors and helped me get settled at the university in the early 80s. And I'm almost intimidated to share this with you all, but I was ashamed of my family. And Tori, I don't know if you had some of those feelings. My folks were poor. I didn't have anyone that had gone to college. No doctors, no lawyers, no engineers, no small business owners, no folks who had gone to prep school. I didn't know what a prep school was. And when I thought about my grandmother while I was a student here in those early years, I was actually ashamed of her. And one of the things that I will say I was most proud of by the time I walked across that stage with that diploma in my hand and a major in African American studies was I was no longer ashamed of my grandmother. My grandmother picked cotton as a little girl. Thank you very much. She had a beautiful mathematic mind in her own right. She still kept across all of those years in that intergenerational transfer. She kept her inner Africa, and I'll never forget that she would refuse to eat with utensils. She actually rejected that. She had decided that the African way of eating with your fingers, or as she would say it, with your fingers, was the right way to eat food. And to graduate and to reconcile myself that my grandmother was one of the most beautiful people I'd ever met, and she was smart and she was fantastic, was a gift of this program.
Thank you. We can go to Eliza next.
Yeah, I guess my decision to minor in African American studies probably started in high school. I think someone mentioned Virginia earlier, how they moved there and they're like, oh my God, there's no Black studies. It was like that for me still when I went to school there. And so growing up, I like to say I was radicalized by Tumblr. That's where I learned a lot about ethnic studies, honestly. And in high school, I would read things like the autobiography of Malcolm X. I would read Sister Outsider. In my English classes, I would be writing papers with like a racial and gender analysis. And I was in the IB program, and I wrote my final paper about the gendered nature of labor in the Black Panther movement, the Black Panther organization. And I just had no one to talk to. I was just kind of engaging with all this material by myself. And so this isn't language. This is language I'd only use to describe the situation in hindsight, I think. But coming to college, my priority was political education above getting a diploma. I knew the diploma would happen. Like, I'm not gonna move to Illinois, come to this school surrounded by white people and not get a diploma. And so I was like, no matter what I do, I signed up as I applied. I was like, I'm taking AFAM classes. Like, I want to do that. And then part of the reason I also stuck with it is I went to a predominantly Black and brown high school, predominantly working class. And Northwestern is like the exact opposite of that. I didn't quite find my working class community as much as I wanted to anywhere, but I was lucky enough to find a great group of Black people to further my political education with, which was my primary goal coming to college.
I would like to think that like my bend towards African American studies started pretty early in life, but college for me was relatively chaotic, and like socially I was partying quite a bit and all over the map, and kind of just figuring myself out coming out, kind of writing my own narrative as I went. And I found that African American studies provided a meaningful framework for all of those things, right? Kind of gave me the space to live out the zany ideas that I had intellectually about identity, about politics, about class, about all the shit, and kind of put it sorry y'all, I swear. So all of the things, good. And, really encouraged it, right? Like really celebrated me for having those ideas and gave me the space to kind of iterate and reiterate on an ongoing basis, which is something that I think is especially important about college. I tell people all the time that college is like the one time that anything kind of goes to the extent that you want it to. And intellectually, I found like a community of folks that allowed that chaos to be something beautiful and something meaningful and something sustainable that you can see a future in. And then two, they were also fabulous. It was, I think I told you at lunch that it was very glamorous and very elevated. And, you know, it was the golden age of AFAM is what somebody called it earlier. I don't know. But, and I agree with that, you know, I wanted to be like these people. Like, these were folks that I would go to their classes and be like, damn, like, why didn't I think that already? Like, or, you know, like the way that they just frame that is just like everything to me. And I kind of lived for their validation in a way that probably was a little bit unhealthy, but certainly I think provided framing for the chaos that was otherwise kind of characterizing my college experience. So.
Oh Lord, I don't know. I was sitting here trying to think, when was there a time I wasn't an AFAM student? And I can't think of a time here at Northwestern. I came here when I was 17. I'm from Memphis. I wanted to be around Black folk. Memphis, if y'all have never been, is a mostly Black city, mostly hardworking Black people. My grandmother was a teacher. My mother is a nurse. I just wanted to be around really, really talented, successful Black women. And I was always an English major. I don't even really remember those classes, I'm gonna be honest with you. I came here to write. You know, I knew I was gonna be a writer. I knew that basically since birth. And I was always told that Northwestern was the best school on earth. My uncle went here for his MBA. And so growing up, even as a little girl in Okinawa, Japan, my daddy's a Marine, so I spent the first 7 years of my life in Okinawa, I had heard of Northwestern. I was walking around telling Japanese folk, I'm going to Northwestern at 3 years old, and I'm gonna win the Nobel Prize. And thank you, goodbye, good night. And I was 3, and everyone in the island was just like, well, let her go, because she seemed like she has a goal. And so when I got into Northwestern, I got into most of the schools I went to, I applied to, but I always knew I needed to come here to the school. There was just something about it. I didn't want to be with a bunch of white folk in Princeton, New Jersey, surrounded by trees. Like, that sounds horrible. You couldn't pay me enough money to do that, degree or not. And I wanted to be, you know, my family, even though my mom and them, we from Memphis, my daddy from the South Side here. And so, yes, shout out Chicago Heights, Homewood, Flossmoor, Markham. I still get my hair done in Harvey. Like, I will fly here to see Miss Vivian. I will do that now. And so I've always, like, there wasn't a point even at 3, I didn't know I wouldn't be some sort of Black studies major. So I wanted to go to an amazing institution of higher learning, and as the only reason I didn't go to an HBCU, my sister went to Howard, my other sister went to Hampton, and they loved it. But I also wanted the same money that white privilege could buy me, but I wanted to sit in a classroom full of Black folk and let my hair down and really feel like, because think about this, you're a 17-year-old poor Black girl from the North Memphis projects. What else would I major in? Like, you know, I wanted to feel comfortable. I wanted to feel at home. And the professors here, like everyone has been saying, made me feel so much like I was taken care of. I never felt like someone wasn't looking out for me. I still call him professor, but Alex is so weird to say out loud, but Alex was, I'm not ready. But I mean, Alex, you were great. We call her, Michael and I just call her T-Von, but Professor Tracy Von Manley is amazing. But T-Von, we'd be like, which T-Von class you taken? Like, Barner Hesse was instrumental. I think one time I wanted to submit my final in poems, and he said no. But that collection of poetry became my first book of poetry that was published when I was still a student here at Northwestern. So yes. So that's why I've always loved Blackness and being blackety black and just, you know, and I wanted to do that and make my parents pay for it. So that's why I just
Thank you. So, what are some of your most memorable moments, anecdotes, moments here during your time at Northwestern relating to AFAM? And maybe we'll start with Eliza this time.
Yeah, this was kind of a hard question for me to think of because I had like a lot of physical anxiety being on campus. So I would like go to class and I'd be like, gone, I'm out. But during the George Floyd uprisings, which started my spring quarter, my junior year, I had a class with Marquez, and he essentially, like, I don't know if I should say this, but it was like, y'all could just show up when y'all want. And so I would show up every so often. Sometimes it would just be me and him. Sometimes it would be another student. And there would be like classes where I'd just show up and I'd just be crying. Because I mean, I was out doing stuff, working on mutual aid, trying to support my community. And it was such a difficult time to be studying Black Studies because it was so intense. And I've just never felt more supported by a professor than I did in that moment.
There are probably two for me. I took this seminar with Jennifer Brody, who I think at the time was like a visiting professor, but it was on James Baldwin, and it was this deep I don't even know, y'all. Like I would leave that class just like totally befuddled, but also like enlightened. Like nothing made sense. Everything was on the table. Like I just don't even know what way is up. Like I'm talking to everybody about everything and nothing made sense. Like it was a really, I think, important moment for me to see myself in literature in a way that I hadn't seen before. And you know, again, kind of giving some framing to the chaos that was otherwise unfolding in other areas. And then the second is that I did a senior thesis. And I don't even know, but and volume 1 was turned into Celeste Watkins and Richard Eiton, who are my dual advisors. And I actually get like emotional even thinking about this, but they looked at this and they're like, what the fuck is this? Like, and like you couldn't tell me it was not hot. Like I was just like, this is like, y'all don't get it. Like, but they really were like, I was James Baldwin. Like as far as I was concerned, I was James Baldwin. I was also like hungover and like probably like had like dark shades on or something. But I was just like, what do you mean? What is this? And they were like, what is this? Like, and I was like, it's a thesis. And you know, it did not leave that room. Like, you know, I think that volume 1, I don't even know where it is now, but it was this moment of, I think, kind of instilling some humility in me that I kind of needed to come down and realize that though I might have a lot to say in class, like it not being encapsulated in a very thoughtful way in writing is going to be an issue. Like this is like not going to work. And it's not to say that your ideas are booty, but like there's something here that is just not being, you know, articulated in a framing that makes a whole lot of sense. I think I needed that. I needed kind of those moments. Oh, there's one other, because I see Martha Biani, is her always asking me what's at stake, and that, you know, kind of being a gussied up way of like, what, like, who gives a shit? And I actually ask that now, like in business meetings, I ask people who report to me, like, what is at stake in this presentation or in what you're doing? Those types of things I think kind of stick with me.
One of the most influential things that have just a moment, a summer, and so it wasn't a class. It was outside of the classroom, and Professor Tracy Vaughn Manley, genius woman that she is, asked just like a few of her students, who's staying behind this summer? I don't know what summer it was, but I stayed behind that summer. I said, I'm here. She said, okay, well, come to my class on this time. I said, class? I said, lady, whatever. But I do whatever that woman tells me to do. And so I came to her class that whatever Tuesday, and she had made a group for us graduate and undergraduate students to sit in her classroom and to learn how to quilt. So she is the woman who taught me how to quilt. That is the reason not my grandmama, my grandma passed. My mama didn't want to know how to quilt. She's like, it takes a lot of time. So think of my mother like Claire Huxtable. So she wasn't gonna, she's like, sit there for hours. So she wasn't gonna do that. And I loved it. And so sitting in a classroom of other Black women and quilting by hand, because Tivon taught us in the way that slave women quilted without sewing machines. So a lot of Black women quilters, even today, even I still do now, make all of my quilts by hand. If you've ever seen one of Tivon's quilts, it's art. She had a show here at Block a few years ago, like maybe 10 years ago or something. But I mean, her quilts are amazing. So that, being in Kresge, we opened the doors, sometimes we stayed till night and we'd see the fireflies out there in the square by Deering and stuff, all lit. Oh, it was beautiful. And to sit there with our pieces and let our hair down and talk about the men in our lives. Lord, that was the most amazing experience to me, just as a person. And then the second experience was whenever Darlene Clark Hahn would come into the classroom. She embodied, and I think she still does, she is my spirit animal guru for fashion, for style. I was like, let me be 10 minutes late, but smelling like Versace blue and coming in Dior. So it's fine. So she just taught me so much about fashion, that she wasn't even teaching the class. She would just come in, and she could wear a scarf as an outfit. You have to be a professor to do this. But it's y'all, Patilla, you would do this too. You would have these scarves and a brooch, and the brooch was a black hand or something. I was like, what is that? Who are these women? So those are my most inspirational times in Northwestern. Ooh, the woman slay.
So Alex, why did you do this to me? So I'll try to pull up the rear gracefully here. And clearly the program has changed a lot. No offense to the female professors in my era, but I don't remember any of the swag or glamour. This was back in the days, right, Professor Patilla, when female professors did not wear makeup. So, so four fond reflections on what I got out of the program. I don't want to put Professor Payne on the spot, but I didn't understand a thing you were saying. It was so complex. It was so convoluted. And other people have talked about being perplexed and befuddled, and that was me too, usually when I was in Professor Payne's class. And I think I walked away with just a vague notion of what it meant to be a dialectic intellectual. And every so often I say that to my staff and they look at me cross-eyed like, what is he talking about? And I think to myself, I didn't get it right. So the lectures were riveting and fantastic and really led to my development. And then I think Andrew talked a little bit about how much mentoring there was and how embedded it is as a part of the program. And I am also a Forrestite, and I really thank Professor Forrest for pulling me aside. Not even about office hours. I'd just be walking out of class and he'd say, Holmes, get in my office, come talk to me. And I would think, what did I do now? Am I in trouble? And he wanted to make sure that the experience I was having learning about our history and our experiences wouldn't make me so angry that I would be unproductive and frustrated and not helpful. So he would say to me, Calvin, you're going to read 1,000 slave narratives. You're going to intellectually witness your grandmother, your great-grandmother, your great-great-grandmother being raped violently by white men, and that's going to upset you. It is going to infuriate you. But I want you to take that furor and put it to good use and be purpose-filled and focus on justice, and don't destroy your life because you're so angry you can't be functional. And I, in hindsight, really appreciate him for proactively pulling me aside and making sure I could channel that rage into something that could be uplifting for all of us, and I've stayed true to that. And then the third thing, I can't remember which one of the panelists talked about it, but it was that really dynamic and exhilarating peer exchange at the Black House. so many conversations, so many late nights, these heated debates about nationalism versus assimilation and which was the best strategy to get our people out of the ditch. Many memorable moments around that. And then it actually enjoyed the studies. So I look forward to getting back to my apartment and turning on some Miles Davis Kind of Blue, whipping out Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, maybe having a little, Clarence said it earlier, a little bit of Jack Daniels on the side just to make sure I was living in the authentic moment, right? So it was a really cool way to learn and to get educated in that sort of unique experience of the culture and the music, and a little bit of libations at the same time. So lots of good memories.
Moving on to the next question, what specific ideas or concepts or conversations associated with African American studies, Black studies, have been most relevant to you? Why don't we start with you this time, Michael? Or should I call you James?
Michael's fine. We'll stick with Michael. I haven't started drinking yet, so things. I don't necessarily know that it was like an idea so much as it's a way of thinking. And like we have now what we call, I guess, systems thinking has always been a thing. But I think, in African American studies, it really was thinking through things very systemically, to not just kind of stop at what is at the top of the text, but actually get a little bit deeper and deeper and deeper, continue to ask why until you can't ask why anymore. And that, I think, is kind of the training that I got intellectually that has followed me, throughout most of my career to this point, is thinking very critically about what am I seeing, what is the data telling me, how can I unpack this data to explain it in a way that's a little bit more formulaic, and then make some meaningful decisions or conclusions or recommendations around that, which is something that, you certainly get a ton of practice in many of the classes in AFAM.
Great. Just a few things that I've used across my life and across my career that I think I learned in the program. One was just the idea of the value, the importance, the significance of thinking collectively and recognizing that we can get more done when we work together. And I think I was introduced to the Kwanzaa principles during the program, and I'm really still motivated by all of them. And the NIA one really sticks out to me, this idea that we can collectively take responsibility for creating the dignity and the breadth of resources that we need to live full human lives. And that's a tenet that I still deploy every day. I'm going to put, because Clarence and I go way back, I'm going to put him a little bit on the spot because he's the big investment banker in the room. But I learned a lot about how inherently extractive the capitalist socioeconomic system is, and how in order for the capital class to have such outsized wealth in comparison to what the vast majority of humanity has to grapple with, there has to be extraction. That somewhere along the chain, somewhere along that value chain, you're underpaying someone. And that from a moral standpoint and from a philosophical and spiritual standpoint, we all need to grapple with that and figure out a different way to create economic equity for all of us. And then the third thing is similar to collective, but it's a little bit different, but it's just around this idea that we have this amazing diaspora, and each of us individually is stronger and more emboldened and will discover more agency when we can tap into that Pan-Africanism and recognize that there are 1 billion of us across the planet doing phenomenal things, and we are part of a chain and we're connected to them. And that gets me fired up every single day. And then this sort of curiosity about the homeland, right? About the motherland, about Africa. I got that here at Northwestern. I got that in the African American Studies program. And I had intended to go on after graduate school to a career, and I think I was talking to Sister Hakeem about this, and start a career in foreign service or something in West Africa. I had a tragedy in my family, and I had to do a quick course correction for grad school and get a master's in urban and regional planning. But later in life, I am now getting to exercise some of that curiosity about the motherland. And I'm privileged enough to be able to spend about 11 months in the US every year, and I spend about 1 full month, if not longer, on the ground in Africa with our sisters and brothers, learning their culture, really sort of restitching my internal metaphysical fabric back together, reclaiming that ancestral right to be connected to our people. And it is immensely centering for me. And the seed for that curiosity was planted in this program.
Slavery. That's it. That's the long and short of it. Slavery. I feel as if I can't do anything in my day-to-day, without understanding the history on how I got here and how my people got to this country. And I really did not fully understand that until I studied slavery here at Northwestern. So even though I was an African American studies major, I had a concentration in 18th and 19th American and British slave narratives. And I went to Ghana and I studied trans-Saharan and transatlantic slavery for a semester. I learned Fanti, Akwaba. I found out I'm a Safo. I really don't think that there would be a book called Memphis if I didn't know of my history. And I felt that and I learned that here at Northwestern. You're always told that and taught that as a Black child in America, but really take a Bryant class. He will change your life. Like a Sherwin Bryant class it pushed me in ways I still have not been pushed in this life. So understanding the diaspora, as you said, like knowing that there are other Black souls on this earth who live within a Du Boisian veil, who understand that the problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line. And to understand where all of these phrases really came from and why they were said and when. That is instrumental to me in my everyday. Like, I really don't think I could function as a Black woman in America and not burn it down if it had not been for this program and teaching me my history, letting me understand the racial constructs. Even when something just racist happens to me, I sit there in the moment. I'm like, well, what is really happening? Like, I take a critical gaze in that moment. I'm like, what is happening here? And how can I use this in a story in the future? So it gave me a way to view the world critically. And I believe that was from my studies of slavery here. So I focus most of my classes not on, I don't know, modern or contemporary Black thought or Black theory. I was like back on the plantation, as Michael can tell you. I'd be like, did you know what they did to us? He's like, yes, I do. Like, this is not new. But I was just really fascinated and still am fascinated by slavery. I came to this country almost as a foreigner. I came here when I was 7 after Rodney King, and seeing that in Japan and be like, why would we go to this country? Like, where they treat Black folk so other. And it still gets me every day, like, wow, because we look dark, they treat us less than. Just here, just in this, it's as a writer, as an author, as a poet, it's something I'll never, and it maybe as a quasi-American, it's something I'll never be able to wrap my head around. But AFAM gave me the tools in which I need to be able to process what is happening to me and the world around me. So that's about it.
Yeah, it's like so much in the department has influenced me. I feel like my answers just could be like a series of half-baked thoughts. But your class, I think Black popular music has had the biggest influence on my politics of any class that I've taken. Just the way you start, like, contrasting what it means to be a member of a diaspora with the formation of a nation state and the maintenance of a nation state has, like, that connection influenced me, like, in unbelievable ways. And then to pair that with music, I can't, music is now, Black music is like the form of Black theorization that I engage with most frequently. And to have that and understand that is so important. Like, there's I will go on Instagram rants about unpacking Black music. There's Lil Durk, Lil Baby, and Meek Mill song where Lil Durk's first 2 lines in it are literally mama's baby, papa's baby. Every time I hear that song, I think of you, and I'm like, that class. And so I'm so thankful for that. And then also, if I've taken a class with you, I've sent your a syllabus that you created, a reading that you made into a prison, because I always took what I was learning in the classes and I would study with the incarcerated people I was writing to. And it was so nice to be able to have 4 years that I could dedicate to studying Black studies and to be able to take the resources I had access to here and expand that to community members that didn't have that type of access, who, if anything, lose that access because of the access I had literally. And so being able to do that and to continue to be able to do that inside prisons and be I learned X, Y, and Z in this class. Here's the syllabus. If you want to construct your own syllabus, here's so y'all are really good at making syllabi. And so, yeah, just being able to almost extract resources from Northwestern outward has been so lovely.
That's a really great segue into the next question. That's a really great segue into the next question. I'm wondering if you all could talk a little bit about how specifically being an AFAM major or minor has influenced your professional, political, organizational work, whatever, volunteering. Specifically, you already spoke to that a little bit in terms of the writing, where you said, go back to the plantation of writing. Eliza, you were talking about it, but yeah, can you talk a little bit about how those ideas and conversations have led you, where they've led you in your professional life, and I would especially be interested to hear from Michael. But I'm not going to start with you. We're going to start with Tara this time. I'm trying to spread it around.
That's an easy question. What day is today? Friday. I've been on a book tour since the end of February. And so I haven't been at home for a solid 7 days since then. So give me a moment. But I think the call was on Monday. I had a call with Hollywood. I've been having Hollywood calls for book to film, book to series. They're going to make it into a series. Yay. We don't know. Well, I won't say which one. But an offer came in on Tuesday that I showed Michael in the hotel room. I was just whatever, let's look at this and discuss. But Stephanie Allen, who is an executive with Homegrown Productions, they've done Hustle and Flow. That's why they're interested in Memphis. They've done Dear White Folk. They've done something new. She's doing Sula, and she's doing Britt Bennett's Vanishing Half. So we had a call, and literally on the Zoom, the first thing she says to me was, I'm an AFAM major. That's the first thing. She doesn't say, hi, my name is Stephanie. Hi, Tara, nice to meet you. She's like, I studied AFAM. I was like, already, we in there, we in this. And I said, okay, well, you have a leg up already on Cynthia Erivo. She just studied poetry. Girl, I'm like, okay, we can kick it. So for me, I trust more people when they're not just Black, but also AFAM majors. I'm like, okay, so you know what to do with Memphis. I feel as if, even though she didn't go to Northwestern, she didn't tell me which school she went to. I should have asked, but I was like, okay, AFAM, we good. I feel as if I can trust her with my words to make it into a beautiful series. I don't feel, I'm not sure, we're still in Hollywood talks. I'm not sure who it goes to yet, but if it did go to Warner Brothers with Stephanie, I would feel very thrilled and honored really, that she would do justice. And I wouldn't have to go back and say, make sure that this character has dark skin. Make sure this character has a Southern accent, like basic things that even in Black Hollywood movies or series that we have to project and ask for. I wouldn't have to feel as if I need to do that with her. She gets it. She be knowing, and if she didn't, we'd have a conversation. And it wouldn't go smoothly. So I still use it. Every single person in my team for Team Memphis, and I have a US and a UK team, they're all women. They're mostly women of color. I refuse to work with a white man for anything ever again in life anymore. I just don't I can afford to live a kind of life where I don't have to. I suggest all of that for y'all. Just going forward. I'm sorry, I do. It cuts out a lot of stress. and so it's basically shaped my life. What are my answers? I'm done. I'm done. I shouldn't be on a panel. Don't invite me here.
You should be on all the panels.
Oh my God.
I mean, I'm just going to do it. I think, I work in diversity and inclusion. I think that, you kind of start off coming out of AFAM being very cognizant of systems of oppression and how they're in conversation with our day-to-day life. And as I was making decisions about my career, I knew that I needed to do work that in some way impacted those systems. I think I just knew too much about them to just leave them as they were. And I was kind of coming in at the height of the recession. And so I was seeing the extent to which our economic system was actually decimating people's lives, in real time. And so it just felt like, maybe corporate is an interesting space to kind of go into and reflect deeply on and try to impact change. Today, I have, I think, a slightly different outlook because I don't think that you can go into a heavily capitalist system like a Google and come out in one piece. And I don't want to have any illusions of how great it is to work there. I don't know if this is being live streamed. Whatever.
I'm your attorney.
Yeah, she's my attorney and she's here. It's being recorded. I mean, I've said it there and I've said it elsewhere as well. But, the reality is that it's not an easy place to work and you can make a ton of money and that's wonderful. But at the same time, it is designed to break people in half. And that I think is the nature of any of these very high stress, high intensity corporations. You can take Google and make it Facebook. You can take Facebook and make it Goldman. I don't know what bank you worked at, but, whatever. I think you understand what I'm saying. And BP and throw whatever you want in there. I think what I've used from my AFAM degree is a knowledge that is the case. Coming in, I'm not expecting anything more than what I've gotten. You asked me at lunch, what is it like? And I was like, everything you've read is true. And I also told you that, I kind of saw it coming, right? Because this is what my classes have taught me, that this system is designed to kill you from the inside out if it's not killed you from the outside in. And so what does that mean? Well, that means that you get everything that you can while you can. And so, I've been extraordinarily blessed to work at some really large and profitable companies. And I just bought my house in Brooklyn, which is something that we don't talk money up here, but the point is that, there are things that I've gotten out of it that I think can change the course of Black wealth, right? And that is not just for me, but for the Black people that I've helped to hire, the Black people that I've supported as they've stayed there, despite the fact that we know that it's not an especially great place for Black and brown people. It also means that there are lessons that need to be shared with folks before they get there, which is don't come up in here and think this shit is sweet, because it's not. It's sweet to a degree, but probably not. And then there are lessons to be shared for the folks who are there now, who are not looking like me, which is to say that you're creating technology that will undoubtedly impact the world at scale. and undoubtedly impact how humanity plays out over the next 2 to 3 to 4 years. Like, so we're not even talking about like a 10-year time horizon at this point. And I am nervous when there are not people in the room that look like me, because these are decisions that are being made that impact everyone. And so anytime that I am like, I'm taking my toys, I'm going home, F this S, is a moment where I actually also have to take a step back and say I was uniquely prepared for these moments. There is a God who is standing over, around, in front, behind me. There are fabulous people who surround me. There's a great therapist who I call daily. And I can't vacate this seat until I have brought another AFAM major to sit here, or someone who thinks systemically, or someone who knows how to ask the right questions and is intelligent and articulate enough to say F this S in language that connects with your audience. So, yeah, that was off the dome. Yeah.
Yeah, this was another question I struggled to think through when I got sent a list of questions, mainly thinking through how to like say this like without rambling. But I feel like in the work that I do, being like a career organizer, which is hard to wrestle with, and like working with prisons, so much of like my political and professional work is the exact same thing. And I feel like I was lucky enough to stumble into that level of overlap, especially at a university that is so pre-professional, that I often felt like the labor I was engaged with, the things I was pursuing, my interests weren't valued at this university, to the point that when I got that award for my organizing at the end of last year from the AFAM department, I was genuinely stunned. Because I was like, damn, like I didn't think people were seeing all this or valued it. And I think that's like one thing that I learned so much from the department, was to value my own interests and to like just keep pursuing them, even if the university is a larger structure. It was like, you're not gonna get a job doing that. I didn't give a fuck about getting a job. I was like, I want to do what I'm interested in. I'm going to keep doing it. And I stumbled into a pretty good one. So it worked out.
That was great, Eliza. Thank you for sharing. So, for me, this question really centers on the metaphysical. I know that my studies led me to just an unflappable, unstoppable, undeterrable, constant sense of purpose. It's like Serifast in my system. I am AFAM every day. I have been since I graduated. It's given me a North Star that tells me every single day I have got to bound out of bed because my people need to be liberated. And I have a set of skills and awareness and a book of relationships that can play a role in that. So there's no time to be wasted. I can't think of a time where I've had any kind of a crisis of consciousness, crisis of identity, crisis of value proposition. I don't even go there. There's so many things to get done, and they have to get done now because we are so far from shore that this idea that I have that I can play at least a small role in liberating my people and getting us to transformation keeps me motivated each and every day. And I've taken that sense of urgency and purpose and translated that into agency. So I run something called a community development financial institution. When I was elevated to be its CEO 24 years ago, it was a really small nonprofit financial services company, 3.7 million in assets altogether. I think we might have had 5 loans on the books at that time. Fast forward, maybe not that fast, 24 years later, we're a $140 million organization. We've grown to be the 7th largest single place nonprofit financial services loan fund in the country, meaning that we focus exclusively on metropolitan Chicago. And I use that purpose and that urgency to fight for our people. It gave me that agency. So we are one of the premier lenders to emerging Black and brown developers focused on revitalizing our communities, lower income suburban parts of the region, the South and the West Side, and making sure that they have lower cost, flexible, accessible financing for their visions. And these are brothers and sisters who often come to the real estate game with not enough cash in their pockets, and they can't meet commercial real estate standards of 30% down or 20% down, and sometimes not even 10% down. And sometimes we're at the table with our customers and they can't even put 5% down. And we're looking at them like, well, brother, what can you put down? And sometimes they say, nothing, right? Can you just make the loan? I've got the technical skills, I can execute. You just gotta believe in me. And I know that the sense of purpose, the sense of urgency, and the agency that it's given me gives me the wherewithal to go into my credit committee, which, and Clarence knows, is still mostly commercial bankers, and fight for my people and say, I know Mary. Mary is smart. She's going to get this done. I actually patronize that business, and I've seen the lines out the back door. So maybe they don't look so good on paper, but I'm going to stake my reputation on this client, on this customer, because they need this money. And I don't think that I would fight as hard and have this level of determination if I hadn't studied in this program.
Thank you. And I know we're moving towards the end, so this is going to be the last question. What do you wish you had learned as an AFAM major or minor in your time here at Northwestern that you didn't learn, that you only came to recognize later on? So let me see. I've lost count of who you want to start? Okay.
That's a really great question, because I felt like my intellectual journey was really robust and pretty strong. I think I don't even know if this is going to answer the question, but I think it's important to say, I think that I'm able to determine people with very strong opinions to decipher those people from people who are actually saying something. And I think we're in this really interesting moment culturally where everyone kind of figures himself an AFAM studies major, and everyone thinks that they're a deep thinker, and they're saying things that sound cute but don't really amount to much. And I don't think that I knew it at the time, but what I was getting out of my experience here was the ability to decipher between kind of the noise and a real point of view that is founded and based on something of merit and is rooted in some meaningful critical framework that actually belongs in the conversation and isn't just some bizarre red herring that's just thrown in there. I'm going to give an example because we were just in the Black House and we saw this ridiculous picture of Chance the Rapper,
Should come down.
which
Should be removed.
it should have never been put. And I don't know who's behind it. And this is no shade if you are on the planning committee. Okay, good. But okay, good. Okay, fabulous. You are. Yeah, he's next to Malcolm X and all of this stuff, and he just tweeted something that felt like a nod to Black private space, but it was bullshit, is what it was. It was what the fuck is he talking about? And
He doesn't know.
And that's the brand, right? But there's so many people who have not sat through any of these AFAM classes and have not fully grappled with what is bullshit and what is real shit. And I feel like that is something I would have liked to hear, Dr. Patello, Dr. Biondi be yo, this is real shit. So what the fake shit is gonna sound like is this, and this is the real shit. Yeah.
Yeah, this question I had a little bit too much to say, so I'll keep it short. But there's a lot of things. It would have been nice as a queer person to learn more about Black queer history and culture, because you would think that Black queer people started in the late 1900s from how things are. So that would be lovely. I think some things that would potentially be difficult for the department itself to wrestle with too, like colorism, fat phobia, things that like not only should we be learning about in classes, but addressing structurally within the department. I also would have loved to learn more explicitly about like strains of Black political thought that weren't liberal. So Black anarchism, Black Marxism, internationalism, learning about the history and present reality of Black self-defense would have been great. These were things that I like often had to supplement with in the classes and have continued to supplement post-grad, but it would have been great to be able to talk about that in class.
Amen to Eliza. I totally agree. That's great. So I only have a couple of things, and you know I'm a AFAM baby of the '80s, and so maybe Michelle and Clarence might agree with me. And who knows? Maybe it was on the yard someplace, but you know I'm poor kid from East St. Louis. I was working 40 hours a week, 2 jobs, and trying to hold down a full load of courses because I had gotten it in my mind basically from African American studies that I needed to also get into grad school. So maybe I wasn't taking full advantage of all of the facilities that were here at the university, but I don't remember there being a lot of emphasis on embedded or attached to or attendant to the program, learning an African language. So when I heard Tara say that, I thought to myself, I would absolutely love to have also been exposed to an African language while I was learning more about the diaspora and our culture and our history and all of that architecture of Africanness, because I think that language is another way in which you learn the culture, the rituals, the tradition that for those of us who have had our culture forcibly removed from our psyches, it's another way to re-engineer yourself back into your legacy and into your destiny. And as I go back and forth to the continent now, I cannot wait. My general region now is Southern Africa, even though I'm probably genetically West African. But my Zulu friends are so mind-blowingly beautiful that I cannot wait to learn their language because I know it's going to make me even closer to them than I already am, and I am salivating at the opportunity. The second thing would be a greater emphasis, and you know, I think I was chatting with someone about this earlier, I think it was Dana, making it mandatory that you're not going to get your BA unless you study abroad for at least 2 weeks, and you've got to go to Africa. We've got to give you some real immersion on the continent. Let's ground this thing down for you so that it's not abstract, that this is something you can feel and that you're really emotionally and metaphysically tethered to. So those would be my 2 things, language and study abroad on the continent.
I agree. I agree with everything that's been said. I second it. I agree that a language, I don't know if Fanti was even offered at Northwestern or if it is now, but it would have been great to study that before I went to Ghana, or Twi, or that's the main dialect out of Accra in Ghana. So that would have been nice to know like a word before I got there. But you know, you don't have to, I did it. But honestly, I think it would have been nice to know how racist Northwestern, other white institutions of higher learning, other white spaces. When I left Northwestern, I had to go out into the world. I went to law school, like how racist these systems are in the everyday. If y'all professors could have told us about how racist some of the things you had to do that day, you know, had to sit in some sort of departmental meeting with Morty looking at him like, God, just, you know, like, I'm sorry. I can say that because I used to work for the man. He never said hello. I worked for the man under the board of trustees in his office during law school for 2 years. He never said hello to me. I was writing the book. He never, like, and I got into the MFA program here, and I was the secretary.
Also the person that authorized was it the Illinois National Guard to be deployed against?
Of course he did. Oh, Morty.
That were mostly
well,
black in
the
fall
one
of
black
2020.
person he does know in his life he never spoke to. So all I have to, thank God, I think y'all are getting a new president, right? Hip, hip, hooray. It's not black? They not black? One day, one fine morning, this will all be. No, but I really do wish y'all gave us the theories the constructs behind some of this systemic oppression. But then, to go out into the world, and even now, like in 2022, to be confronted with racism on a daily basis, I just wasn't, and I guess I still am not, prepared for that. A lot of white women have bought my book. Right. And I was at an event on Wednesday, and a white woman will say her name is Karen. Lovely woman, right? She asked me, she said the same exact thing a white professor, I'm going to say the name because I don't go here no more, so I don't care. Michelle Falkoff said to me, who's a professor here, she said they both asked why I use nigga so much in the book. Why I use the nigga, N-word, nigga. What? Why you, nigger, with a hard R too. I use it with a hard R too. Why I use it so often in the book. And this was a question presented to me at a book club on Wednesday night in Memphis. And I said, she said, why is your language so abrasive? And I said, what do you mean abrasive? I think it's lovely. And she's like, N-word this, N-word that, end quote. And I said, well, can you ask your ancestors why they called us that when we got here in chains? And yet we still made art. And that's all I had to say. So to Professor Falkoff and to Karen, thank you. But other y'all, can y'all please even share some of the issues y'all as Black professors have to go through in academia? I would love to know.
And just to piggyback really quick, because Tara and I talked about this after having lunch with you. And I was like, not to throw you under the bus, but I was like, bro, like if we hadn't known like some of the systemic challenges that the faculty may have been facing at any given moment, like we could have like mobilized with you. And then now, like every time I turn around, they're calling me, asking me for money. And it's like, and I'm like, oh, well, I mean, I had such a great experience, but I had no idea that it was such a challenging experience for many of the faculty that I, deeply respect and love very much. And so I'm signing checks, not knowing I'm like signing checks to like, a hater. And so I do send, directly to the department? Oh, sorry. We need to wrap up.
Oh, gosh. I want to call out some more professors, though, now.
Thank you all so much. There's a 15-minute break. There's coffee and refreshments in the foyer. Oh, it's a 10-minute break. And then it's Z-Way's keynote. So everybody's seen the clips of Z-Way from the Showtime television show, so be sure to come back for that.
First of all, you cut the fuck up on this stage. Thank you.
I just wanted to have fun with my